Hey, welcome to the CMO Whisper Show. I'm your host, Steve Olensky. Part marketing practitioner, part ad agency veteran, part journalist. I was a writer for Forbes for 10 years. I've had so many insightful conversations over the years with business leaders, to athletes, to celebrities, to, of course, CMOs. The only difference now is instead of sharing those insights through written form, I'm doing it this way. My guest today is Bonin Bough, co-founder and chief strategy officer at Portrait Media Group. He's one of the most awarded marketing leaders on the planet, a rare blend of operator, builder, and boundary pusher who has reshaped how billion-dollar brands, grow. Bonin's career reads like a highlight reel of modern marketing. Oreo, Cadbury's, Gatorade, Frito-Lay, PepsiCo, Mondelez. He became one of the youngest Fortune 500 C-suite executives, led transformations that rewired global organizations, and built campaigns that turned beloved brands into cultural heat engines. He's in the Advertising Hall of Achievement. His name shows up on lists like Fortune's 40 Under 40, Fast Company's Most Creative People in Business, Ebony's Power 100. He's an author, a CNBC host, and one of the most dynamic voices in the industry. And he just stepped into a brand new role of dad. So we're going to start there. How's it going? How much sleep he's getting? From there, we're going to get into the evolution of the CMO role, the rise of multicultural growth, the limits of reach, the power of resonance, and why content, culture, and AI are reshaping the playbook. Bonin Bough, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited, my friend. It's good to
All
see
right,
you.
so as a fellow dad, I got to ask though, okay, how's the sleep going?
Man, look, I feel like I'm a very old dad, and I feel like, it's a young man's game. Either you have to be young or you have to be resourceful. And so I'll tell you a funny story. I thought I was being so smart. We have an apartment that we've had forever. We rent it out, and it's we rent it out to college kids. It's a 2-bedroom. We cut into 3-bedroom, but our home is a 1-bedroom before we had no kids. So I said, okay, we're gonna. Usually in the summer it's empty because the college students are away, and we get a new batch. They were gonna stay. I said, hey, can we? So anyway, so let's just say I kick them out. And the plan was the child was supposed to come in June. And so we're ready to move into this in June. And of course, the baby comes a month early. She had to, anyway, it was all fine, but they had to, they had to deliver it a month early, him a month early. And my whole plan was that I was going to fly her mom in. We were all going to live together. Her mom was going to help with the nights. It was going to be one big happy thing. And so, of course, it's a month early, so we can't move in. So here we bring this baby home. And we're in this 1-bedroom apartment. I'm sleeping on the couch with my wife and the kid, and we're so nervous, and we're up. And all I can hear is my mother-in-law snoring in the bedroom. And after, I thought it was so brilliant, right? I had it all planned out. And of course, nature has a way of making sure that you remember who's really in charge. And so after 3 nights of this, I said, get the baby nurse, get the night nurse, get a night nurse. So we got lucky, we had a night nurse, which definitely made life a lot easier. So I was able to sleep, and we could alternate, the nights when she wasn't there. But look, it's literally a labor of love. And so, you just, so look, I'm not going to lie. My wife is now in Finland with her family. So I am sleeping like a baby.
Pun intended. I love, but this too shall pass. So,
I look, hey man, I cherish every moment, both with him and without him.
It's the greatest job you'll ever have. It really is. Trust me.
I know. The only thing I wish my dad would have still been around to see his grandkid, but I know he's watching. So
he sees it. I'm sure he's very proud of you.
It's all
all right, let's jump in because I know we're limited on time, and there's a ton I want to get to you about. And I want to start with the CMO role and how it's changing. I think you described it as it's changing from managing spend to shaping culture. So let's start there. What did you mean by, and why is it changing from managing spend to shaping culture?
The CMO role is so interesting because it's, we ask the same question for, at least the 30 years I've been here. I'm like, how is the CMO role changing? How's the CMO role changing? I think that in many respects, right now, the currency of growth is culture. And as a result, that's the most important thing that a CMO can focus on is how do I tie my brand to either exist in culture, or how does my brand create culture? And I think that, spend is an artifact of a world where you could push things down a very limited amount of pipes and know that the entire world would see it. Now, in many respects, spend is almost less of a lever than it has been before, because the proliferation of channels and platforms is so massive that no matter how much you spend, you can't conquer all. Whereas before, you could. And you felt like you were everywhere because you were everywhere where communications happened at mass and at scale. And look, at the end of the day, I don't actually believe that this game is about how much you spend. I tell my teams all the time, like, we can't outspend them, but we can
Mm.
outsmart them. And I think that, the best things are going to be those that are the most creative, the most unexpected, the most aligned to culture. And that's what wins. And I remind people, if you look at something like the Jean-Claude Van Damme, two things. One, I think we don't treat B2B marketing like we should. I think we unfortunately believe that it can't be as good as consumer marketing, but this is a case in point for both points I'm trying to make. If you think back to that Jean-Claude Van Damme piece that went around the internet like crazy, where he was standing on
Hmm.
two trucks and then he did the split,
Yep.
right? So that was for Volvo Precision Steering on trucks, which maybe 0.001% of the human population actually know what it is or care about it. So that makes my point around B2B. But my point here is that they didn't spend a lot of money on that in terms of media placement. They just put it in a really intelligent place, which was LinkedIn, and they had a really creative concept. And it took off. So I think that when we think about what the role of the CMO is, the role of the CMO is really to understand what their brand is, figure out how it can connect to culture or create culture, and how to do that in a way that's unexpected and generates conversation and excitement, so that it lasts beyond those ideas, and those brands last beyond just the money that I spend on it.
Let me push back a little. Let me play devil's advocate here. I'm a CMO going, wait a minute, I don't want all that responsibility. I don't want to be responsible for shaping culture. That's a lot. And I have a limited runway anyway, because we know my average tenure is 3 to 4 years. What do you say to CMO who goes, no, 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 I don't want to be responsible for shaping culture?
I mean, look, the beautiful thing about the business that we're in, which I don't think we realize, is that by nature, brands live in and amongst humans, and they do shape culture, regardless of whether we want to or not. When you think about, like, Levi's at one point meant freedom to certain people, like Pepsi gave, rise to the choice of a new generation. I mean, like, these are the things, they literally inspire us, we inspire them, and they're a part of our life. That's actually the precious thing that you have a chance to do when you're a brand marketer, is that you actually have a chance to, and quite frankly, an obligation when you're working on brands that have
Mm.
legacy, an obligation to maintain, the space and place for that brand to exist and be part of culture and part of the human experience. I mean, if that doesn't wake you up in the morning and you're not excited to do that every
Yeah.
single day, then you're probably in the wrong job. There's nothing I can tell you that's going to change your
Mm.
mind about it. But I know the people who are the best at it and the people who enjoy it the most are there because they realize that they are sitting in a space where they're actually talking and having a dialogue with the world on so many different levels, or with a specific community. I look at the work we just did. It's interesting because everybody's out there talking about AI. In fact, later today we have our AI workshops that we do inside the company with all the employees, just as a way to just continue to make sure that we're the sharpest. A lot of people talk about AI. This year there was only a couple of spots that actually employed the use of it. And, I think two or three, a handful. And one of those were a piece that we did for a company called PC Richards. And we did it with Stan Smith, probably one of the most iconic, you know, people, the number one selling sneaker
Mm.
in history. It launched right into the middle of the US Open. We launched his documentary as well. Massive hit. And the reason why I bring that up is because PC Richards is a staple in the tri-state area. Like, if you get into an Uber and you ask a guy, where do you get your TV? He says, I got a guy at PC Richards. Like, it is a staple here. And so one of the biggest pieces were for us was to maintain how important that brand is to the community, and at the same time celebrate, all the experiences that those that either knew the brand or new to the tri-state area would make them curious to want to experience the brand. And so that's like, and the spot has, there's a couple spots, but the spot, the one that we launched first has Stan smacking mattresses across the city, showcasing the delivery, and people smacks it into a window, and somebody comes out and says, "Thank you, Stan," and it's to the Dido song, and it's, "Thank you for the best day of my life," and it's just like, thank you, PC Richards, for being a staple in the community and always ensuring that you provide the best service, the best price, and all those pieces. But also, thank you for caring about this community and helping to solve so all those pieces you think about, and that's what makes it exciting, because this is a 115-year-old family-owned business. Not only do they have legacy as a business, but they're a staple in the community. And that's the puzzle, which is, how do you bring them, how do you continue continuity, how do you make sure that you stand for what the brand stands for, how do you tie it to culture, and how do you excite people and remind them. And then we brought the whistle. When I grew up, the jingle was, "You gotta buy a PC at PC Richards, do 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 do." And so at the end of all this, we brought the whistle back, and a couple of spots he whistles, and so that's the beauty. And so, look, if you don't find excitement in that, and what you're worried about is, I'm only going to be here for 3 years, I look at it as, I'll tell you a different last story. We were with I was at an event, and one of the former presidents were speaking and talking to a CEO. And the CEO said, "Hey, don't you ever feel that 4 years just isn't enough to kind of drive change?" And he said, "Well, how long have you been a CEO?" And the CEO said something that was a long time. And he said, "Well, first of all, I'm sure there's a lot of people who wish you weren't. You left after 4 years," as a joke. But what he said, which was interesting, is that sometimes constraints force you to focus on the most important things. And so, okay, fine. If you believe you're only there for three years, then do the single best amount of work that you can do in those 3 years and have the largest amount of impact you can. And that's what I would focus on if that was where I'm constraining myself. But I don't see the world that way. But
Well, before I go on, thank you. Now I have that earworm in my head of that PC Richards jingle. So thank you for that. I'll be complaining about you the rest of the day, but I digress. I want to switch to multicultural and get your thoughts on that. But before I do, because my audience are primarily CMOs, what do they need to know, learn, do over the next 1, 3, 5 years, in your opinion?
I used to get yelled at, and I was always told, if you're not in these four walls, you're not working. And my response was, if I'm in these four walls, I'm not working, because the world doesn't exist inside of the headquarters of Mondelez. Let me just be very honest with you. It's, and I'm not saying that they're not amazing thoughts and ideas that come out of that, but you're still within a bubble. And so being out in the world and touching the consumer and seeing how the consumer's operating and talking to consumers, it's so funny, because, we were, one of the big things when I joined Mondelez was to make sure that we were the number one mobile marketer in the world. And everybody had been talking about mobile marketing, and I was so tired of hearing about it. I said, we're just going to set our sights on doing it. We dedicated spending 10% of our total global budget on that. A number one mobile marketer of the year, 4 years in a row. I mean, just a litany of mobile. I mean, what people don't realize is that in our Mobile Futures program, which was our bringing mobile startups and brands together, forcing them to come up with a project in 90 days, that was launched with guaranteed financing and all this stuff like that, to make sure that we actually got tests. And we would do 9 tests in 90 days, 10 tests in 90 days in markets all around the world. No company was doing that at that kind of scale, but that meant we were building a real muscle memory of how to win. And we have so many projects that can win. If you use Waze and you see all those little advertisements that pop up, the reason why those ads are there is because of us. So, one of the brand marketers went to work, chose Waze, worked on the Waze partnership, and we had 7-Eleven as our partner, and that was what said, "Hey, wouldn't it be amazing if we could tell people," she ran Stride Gum, "wouldn't it be amazing if we could tell people that Stride Gum was available at 7-Eleven just a mile away from here?" And that's how that little ad unit became built. And so I think that the thing for CMOs is many times we get caught up in the theoretical and in the PowerPoints, and sometimes we don't actually go and play with the tools or the pieces that are new and available to us. And so, like, even now, one of the challenges I've been giving myself is use AI to create anything in 4 hours. So whether it is a table that I can literally have shipped to me, whether it is a product that you can swipe a credit card and you can actually buy, you'll see a little series that I'm dropping. But for me, what was most important was not to play around on the edges of like ChatGPT, but what was important was to use all of the programs that I could to expand my mind about really truly understanding what was going to be humanly possible. And the pace and change is amazing. We all know that. We all can sit on panels and we can talk about it. But it's not until you challenge yourself to just use as many of the tools as you can to see if you can accomplish something. And it's training you to now begin to step out and say, okay, how do I then change my people? So how do I make sure my people have the same equipped knowledge that I have? And then at the same time is how do I change my organization? Like what is really, and you step back from saying, okay, let me get 30% efficiency. I might even be able to write the program that can reinvent, what I need done with inside the organization, which is the crazy thing about it. And by the way, all I got to do is talk to it. I think that right now in this moment of change, I think the most important thing is to roll up your sleeves and actually do the doing as much as you can, because it's going to change your mindset of what's the real next wave going to look like, and what's truly coming down the pipeline. Because for many times we rely on our agencies and partners and those things, and we believe that the fundamentals are constantly shifting. It's just we don't realize it, and then finally we get there. But to be ahead, that's what I think you got to do. You got to spend real time experimenting right now,
and you're going to fail, and that's okay.
Look, what did Edison say? I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just learned 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. Like, I don't even. The funny thing is we talk about failure in the marketing space all the time, and it must fail. Dude, the bottom line is the walls of these organizations are littered with failures. Crystal Pepsi, that's not around. You know what I mean? But you could name said product, and it's okay for some reason in product innovation and that. But these businesses are built to fail. They're built to fail a lot, but they're also built to win big on occasion. And that's what you're hunting for. That's what you're hunting
someone
for.
said, I think if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. Something like that.
Yeah, and if you're not trying,
exactly,
leave.
Because
and if you can't act, teach a chin. I'm just kidding. Whatever.
Go. All right, you said something to me when we met earlier about multicultural audiences and how they're not a segment; they're the growth story. Elaborate for my audience.
Yeah, look, we've been talking about that a lot, but look, I make a joke, and I say Finegro like is my kid, and GROW, of course. But what's interesting now is we've always talked about them as being the growth audiences, and now when you actually walk and you interact and just spend time looking around, and you'll see it's more than just. First of all, we for years we've said multicultural, and then we still segment it. So there is an African American segment, a Hispanic segment, an Asian. So that is true. But there's a huge layer that not legitimate, but that is actually also of mixed race. And so I joke, is my son going to like fried chicken or is he going to like salted salmon? Like, I don't know where he's going to, my wife is Finnish and I'm, not. And I think that we need to, instead of looking at, when we think about multicultural, I think the challenges that we've had is that we purely look at a lot of it through a lens of race, for lack of a better term, although we might not say that. We try to get at that in different ways because platforms don't allow us to be explicit, but we try to get at that in different ways. And the reality is I think that as we move forward in this space specifically, what's going to be more important are going to be values and belief systems. And we see the power of that in other aspects of our life, primarily politics. Values and beliefs, and understanding the values and beliefs and not the demographics or even the psychographics, but the value and belief system is what helps you connect to a person's emotion. And once you connect to a person's emotion, that's how you drive real action. And that's the difference, right? And I was just watching something and they were, just talking about the power of emotion. You can't connect to them that way by just understanding household income.
Yep.
Like it's just not a thing anymore,
Yep.
And I talk about some of the stuff that we do on our platforms, and our goal is to have the most sophisticated buying platform for this marketplace, and you need data sets, and I look at some of the data sets, and a great example is credit score. So credit score is a very poor determinant of buying behavior for many communities. And so if you look at the African American community, for example, credit is not necessarily highest on the agenda. But some of the platforms and partners that we have, instead of looking at credit score, they look at like ACH pull. So they say, okay, you're willing to spend money on gas, which means you're most likely going to pay a car loan. But if you don't keep your electricity bill paid, we're not going to give you, a home loan. So, so instead, truly understanding, deeper insights into, and the same goes for, when you look at certain, the Hispanic community, or and it's not because they don't believe in credit. It's just, that's just not central to how they operate. And even in certain areas in the Asian community, cash is king. And so there's just and so the point here is that at the end of the day, when we think about multicultural, we have to begin to really understand the belief systems and the values that drive how they see the world, so that we can connect to them emotionally and actually drive real action. And that's the thing that I think we forget about. And look, not to say that that's a unique thing just to multicultural, but the reality is that level of sophistication and knowledge and insight and understanding hasn't been deployed. And so that's where we're excited about. And it's not this, go ahead.
It's a good segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which is reach versus resonance, right? And really understanding that reach just isn't enough anymore, right? How do you define the difference between reach and resonance?
It's funny because you got to reach a lot of people to have impact. But if you reach them with something that doesn't resonate, it's meaningless. But at the same time, even if you reach a few people with something that resonate, you might actually have a bigger impact than reaching a lot of people with something that doesn't resonate.
Mm-hmm.
So resonance is definitely the most important aspect of any type of marketing or advertising. But you have to first understand what you're trying to resonate with. By the way, I'm talking about beliefs and I'm talking about values, but there are some tried and true stuff that works. There's a common denominator around, comedy, and people from all aspects laugh, regardless of your belief system. But I do think that identifying what am I trying to resonate with, and then developing the campaigns, messages, brand behaviors that resonate with that belief system that you're targeting is probably one of the most important things. Look, at the end of the day, I think that resonance, you feel it, you understand it. It's just like when you look at the work that we did on Honey Maid, or you look at the work that Unilever did on Real Beauty. That stuff just has emotional
Yeah.
resonance. It's it touches you and you think about it and you're reminded. Or even which was BAM, but ship my pants. Like it just it was smart. It was just smart.
It's very smart.
And so it was smart. And so it's but it has resonance, and the best stuff does. Or it's inspiring. Just do it. But that's the thing, is that you see so much stuff that is not even striving to find that higher
Yeah.
connectivity, that feels like they just mailed it in, and you're like, what are we doing here, man? What are we doing?
I've long held the belief that marketers in general don't give consumers enough credit, meaning I think consumers know, like you know about me, like if I'm talking to you like you're a brand. So you know enough about me. Don't put something in front of me that doesn't resonate or is relevant to me.
The other thing for me is change the narrative and the nature of the conversation of the world. Like, we're sitting on again, I hate to bring it back to politics, but when you look at the kind of money that politicians spend, right, it's big, but they're changing an entire narrative
Yeah.
of the way a country sees
Hmm.
themselves. But they don't spend the kind of money that brands spend. I mean, on a global basis. So, like, let's kind of have, create stuff that actually moves the world forward and changes the conversation and creates something that is a shared experience or any of those kind of things, man. And I think that again, we don't hold ourselves up to a high enough standard to appreciate the importance. And more than that is how lucky we should be and the
Yeah.
opportunity that we have to work on in this business and do what we get to do. It's to me, it's pretty, I'm
Yeah.
always in awe, and I could not love anything more.
No. You have to love it. Like you said, otherwise get another job.
Yeah.
You know, you brought up AI not long ago. I got to get your thoughts on where does AI right now, in your opinion, truly move the needle for CMOs?
Everywhere, every single place. Now, look, I'm not bandwagon like that.
Mhm.
I believe that it's not about product, but it's people, process, and prompts. And I'm very clear with everybody. I'm not worried about AI taking your job. I'm worried about somebody who understands how to utilize AI taking your job.
Yeah.
That's what I'm worried about. And for me, that's why I keep saying the most important thing is to spend time actually using it, not seeing a demo, not seeing slides, not seeing theoreticals around what it can do and da 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 da, but actually using it. Because it's only until your mind, is unlocked because you have really true base level. I don't need you to even be expert, but just experience in seeing and experiencing across a vast majority of. That's why I'm creating product. I'm managing my life. I'm just going through all the things. Now, look, a lot of that stuff I'm never going to, use.
Mhm.
But reality is that it continues to shape how you now see what the world is about to look like. And I think one of the biggest things for me is challenging ourselves to say, okay, what do we do today? What is a process that we do today? Now, what if we just told, hey, I want to give you this and I want this to happen? What would come out of that? It might be something totally different because what we're not trying to do is take an existing process and just make it incrementally better. And I'm not even, actually, I shouldn't even say incrementally better. Right now, if you made most of the processes in a business 30, 40% better, it would be transformational. And my point is that I think you can go well beyond that. You can probably eliminate 30, 40% of the processes. And then on top of that, make those that remain maybe 2x better, And so that's kind of where we're sitting. And very few companies have a chance to kind of build from the ground up again around kind of what an infrastructure around this would look like. But I guess my point is look, the hype is not wrong in the sense that it's big, but reading the hype versus actually touching the tools
Yeah.
is where the difference is going to be made, man.
And that comes back to that you have to know going in, you are going to fail more than you succeed, and that's okay.
Yeah, but the funny thing is what you begin to realize is that the beautiful thing about it is that you're creating a whole new collaborator that doesn't have a filter. So it's not biased. I mean, there's biases, and we can talk about cultural biases and all those kind of things, and that exists. There's no question about that. But I'm just saying it will come back with things that you would never come back with because you have historical lanes that you approach a problem through. And all of a sudden, it doesn't have any of that.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, I don't know where this is going, but I'll go with it. Let's see where we land. And it's like this dance that's interesting and unique. But again, for me, it's just like, just use the tools and don't just use like, hey, I'm going to create an image or a video, but literally challenge yourself. Like, okay, I'm going to actually go create, the entire media planning and buying process that I want, how I
Yeah.
want it. You know what I mean? Like, and you'll be surprised at how fast, we're creating the next thing is just literally a full on brand campaign. And one of the platforms we're using is taking all the minds of some of the greatest creatives and put it into one place. So I think anyway, the idea is just seeing the pace and speed, and more than that is building the muscle memory, the mental muscle memory of how you need to think in this world.
Yeah. I am looking at the clock. I know we gotta stop, which saddens me because I could keep talking to you for hours, and we will keep talking for sure, and there will be a part two. I promise you that. But Bonin Bough, I cannot thank you enough for coming on.
Look, Steve, it's my pleasure. And I think, the one thing I just want to leave everybody with is that it's sometimes really good to just go back to the beginnings and what made you love the business that you're in and the work that you do today. And it's rare when you kind of get to a certain level where you get to actually go back and go to the editing room or go back and and I just encourage people to on occasion take a moment to make themselves an intern again and enjoy the process and see how much has changed, but enjoy that creative process that gets us to the things that make these brands shine versus, the seniority component, which is also fun because you get to make bigger decisions. But it's a childlike wonder that I think most of us got into this industry for, and don't lose that.
You just reminded me, if I can take a second, I'm a big pop culture guy, right? I'm constantly referencing movies and stuff. And one of my favorite movies is LA Confidential. I don't know if you remember.
Of course.
But there's a scene when Guy Pearce's character asks Kevin Spacey's character, why did you become a cop? And he goes, I don't remember. And you just made me think of that when you said that about how many marketers are so, hey, Bob, Mary, Joan, why did you become I don't remember. That's sad. And what you're saying is get back to that.
I remember I was at I had a web company in college, and I was coming out. I was going to go do political philosophy because I was a physics poli-sci major, and somehow I ended up there. I had a PhD program at Columbia, and that summer, a freelance program. I used to be a programmer, and I programmed at like Proxycom, Razorfish, all those guys. Mm-hmm. And I went to an internet party, and it was a vodka fountain in a shrimp boat, and I said, "This is the industry for me." So I remember exactly why I got into this industry.
You're giving all the young marketers the best.
I still like a good. No, I'll tell you, those young years, man, building an agency, all the late nights. But we were with each other and we were building stuff and we were creating stuff. And, we were battling with clients because we thought they didn't know good. I never forget, we did this thing called Mr. Picasso Head, which was these Picasso pieces. And we thought it was the best idea ever. And we kept pitching it. No client would buy it. So we just launched it ourselves. And within a week, we had 2 million Picasso heads made. It was on the cover of New York Times.
Wow.
Art section. It took off. And that was the first time I went to South by Southwest, which if I go this year or next year, it'll be my 23rd or 4th year there consecutively. We won People's Choice Award, but we were just creating, and that was the fun stuff. Yeah. And at that time, because it was 99, the internet was so new.
Yep.
We were creating stuff that had just never been done before. And, trying to figure out interface design was new, just everything, even like I remember we used to work on Tibco and we'd have to patch together because database protocols weren't there. I mean, just all the pieces. And I just encourage, we're in the build mode again now. And I just encourage people to go back to those times because that's when it's exciting when you're, when you're in the thick of it and you're creating stuff that just has never existed in the world before, or at least not that you've seen. It might have been on the other side of the pond or, ocean. But yeah, because that's, and I also think not forgetting how important team is in that too, because, enjoying that journey with a group of individuals.
There's nothing like it.
There's nothing like it.
Nothing like it.
All right, Steve, I rattled too much. Sorry.
No, you and I could talk literally for hours. Listen again, my friend, thank you so much. And I guarantee you there will be a part 2.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the CMO Whisperer Show. I hope you shared this episode with your friends. And if you have not already, please subscribe to be kept up to date on all the latest episodes. And if you're so inclined, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.